Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome each and every one of you to Game Changers Devotional. As we say each week, we don't think anybody shows up on this call by accident. We believe the Lord leads people here, and we've seen evidence of that over the last year, and we're excited that God's letting us use this platform in order to help people get through their week. This week, I want to talk a little bit about something that I remember in high school, that people would say you would do something for them, or they would do something to you, and you'd say, "You're going to owe me. You're going to owe me big time." And I don't know if you've ever said that or not, but it's something that I've said, and I've had people say that. But I was thinking about the fact that sometimes people feel like that we may owe them, and they may forget to tell you thank you. And I remember when I was in college, my wife was in college. She had a vocal scholarship to Louisiana Tech, and she was a very good soloist. She got to be known as a wedding singer. A couple of friends were getting married and asked her to sing in the wedding, and then people were there would have kids that were getting married. They would ask her. And before long, it was every weekend we were at a wedding rehearsal somewhere. And then we'd have a wedding on Saturday night, but as things went along, and it got to be where she was more popular and more popular, it got to where that people would ask her to sing in a wedding, and she was very reasonable in what she charged and everything, but it got to where that she was the hired gun, and it just got to where that people just weren't nice anymore. That brides had gotten really snippy, and the mothers of the brides would get snippy, and it turned from being a great experience because people were grateful for it to one that you almost dreaded. And she eventually just got to the point where she said, "Look, I'm tired of doing this." And from the standpoint, she was tired until the fact of the way the people were treating her. And I remember hearing the story a pastor told one time that I think goes right along with what I want to talk about today. And he talked about a vendor who sold bagels for 50 cents each day on the street corner of his food stand. And a jogger ran past and threw in a couple of quarters into the bucket, but he didn't take a bagel out. He did the same thing every day for months. And one day, as the jogger was passing, the vendor jumped out and said, "Stop." And the jogger said, "You probably want to know why I always put money in, but I never take a bagel out, don't you?" And the vendor said, "No, I just wanted to tell you that the bagels have gone up to 60 cents. So if you think about that, the fact that the jogger was going by and he's never taken a bagel out, he was giving a gift to that vendor. But the vendor totally missed that. He was willing to ask that he start paying. If he's going to do that, put 60 cents in, not 50 cents. Well, if you go back in the Bible, you find that people have missed that message, the real message there, for a long time. And all you have to do is go back into Luke in the 17th chapter in verses 11 through 19, where Jesus heals 10 men with leprosy. In chapter 11, it says, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have pity on us.' When he saw them, he said, 'Go show yourselves to the priest.' And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, 'Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?' Then he said to him, 'Rise and go. Your faith has made you well.'" Now, what you need to realize here is that being a Samaritan has a huge impact there, because this time there was only one thing worse than being a leper. That was being a Samaritan. And the Samaritan was basically a hybrid. When the Assyrians invaded Israel, the Assyrians that took over in the north ended up marrying into Jewish families, and the Samaritan race was a result. And they weren't accepted widely because of that. So you've got a Samaritan in with these 9 other Jews, and he knows he's not accepted, but yet out of all the ones that came back, it was the Samaritan. So I'm going to ask you to step outside the box a little bit with me here. Jesus asked the question, where are the other 9? But have you ever thought about why the other 9 didn't return? There were 9 of them, which meant there were 9 different personalities. And if you'll just go along with me here and think about this, where you may identify maybe with one of these different people. Perhaps that first leper that was healed, was one of those guys that just thought, man, he just suddenly had gotten better. And, it was on his own, and he just was thanking his lucky stars, so he didn't think he had a reason to say thank you to anybody. And maybe that second leper thanked the priest for proclaiming him clean, but he never made that connection between Jesus and the healing. And perhaps the third one avoided Jesus because he had heard that Jesus had pretty high demands. He just wanted to be healed physically and then to get on with his life. And he didn't want to be confronted with the demand that Jesus had for discipleship. So that one, I think, relates to a lot of people. Sometimes, we wouldn't mind getting the healing, but we don't want to take what goes along with it. And then maybe the fourth one ran home to his village after the priest had said he was clean, and maybe he just wanted to hold his wife and his children because, his disease had probably forced him to abandon his family. And now he had a chance to recommit to his family, providing for them, to be a husband, a father, and place them in a position of greater financial security. So maybe that was what he was focused on. Perhaps the fifth one had good intentions to return and thank Jesus, but he just got busy, and he forgot about it. He had other things going on. Are we guilty of that sometimes? And perhaps maybe the sixth one said, I've had such a hard life. God owes me this one. Maybe number 7 said that, hey, I'm just really stressed. I'm clean now. The priest has proclaimed that I'm clean, and I'm going to have to throw some parties when I get back, and I'm going to have to celebrate, and I want to celebrate my homecoming, and, he didn't have time to go back and find Jesus. Or think about the 8th person, the 8th leper. Maybe he just wanted to get over what was in the past and focus on the future. And I've seen that times that somebody has something traumatic happen to them, and they don't want to think about what has happened to them. They just want to move on. Maybe that's how that 8th leper was. Or perhaps, the 9th was going to go back and thank Jesus, but when he walked outside from the temple, he realized that he was going to have to walk back beside the Samaritan. And, as I said before, anything that was lower than a leper was a Samaritan. And so maybe he was thinking, look, I'm in good standing again. I'm clean. I've been healed. And, if I go back and associate with this despised foreigner, well, maybe that'll look bad for me. And maybe you're like one of the, you're like the Samaritan. You're following God and you have faith. But then again, you may find that, you find yourself sometimes that you've been blessed. And because you've been blessed, you've kind of forgotten, who blessed you. I know that I heard a Sunday school teacher tell me one time that it's important when you have prayer requests and you're praying and you spend your time with God that you write down what you're praying for. Not because you'll remember it when you're praying, but because when that prayer is answered, you'll remember that you've been praying for that. And sometimes if we don't do that, we'll forget that God has answered prayers. When we do that self-reflection, I think we can all probably relate to one of those different types of people that possibly been in those 9 people. I think that a lot of them didn't return because they got so caught up in the gift that they had received that they forgot about the giver. And sometimes in life, we get to the point where we think that God owes us, when in fact he owes us everything. Everything that we've got is because God has allowed us to have it. And so I think we need to remember that we need to praise God for all the things he's done for us and thank him for the things he's done. And I think that we can take that a step further. I think within our community that there are people that just need to hear thank you sometimes, because we are what they'll see. They'll see through us what Christ is. Just think about when you go through the drive-thru. I know that when you pay for a meal at the drive-thru, that person is supposed to, you're supposed to get a hot meal handed to you out that window, and that happens a lot of times. But if you realize that you can just say thank you and tell that person, I appreciate what you do, that can make their day. And that's what being Christ-like is all about. And I've heard countless stories about people saying thank you and making a big impact. And I'll share this with you. 2 days ago, I had to change up a doctor's appointment. The doctor's a friend of mine, and he called me and says, look, we don't want to do the telemedicine or anything, but let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to just move your appointment for a month. So I called his office and talked to the receptionist, and we got everything changed up. And she said, do you need anything else? And I said, no, I just need one thing other than that. That's just, I want to tell you thank you for what you do in coming into the office. As I know you're considered an essential employee, but I know that presents a risk to you. And I stopped, and I was thinking, well, did I lose her? And I could hear her crying. And I thought to myself, if that lady is crying, how many people don't stop and say thank you? So I encourage you today to say thank you to people, and to remember that God has blessed you. And sometimes, you should go back and thank God, if not all the time, for everything He's blessed you with. Let me lead us in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this day. We have so many things to be thankful for, dear God, and I'll lift you up today. We just can't say thank you enough. In the midst of everything that's going on, dear God, you still have provided blessing after blessing to us. And I just pray that you would be with our country right now, all of our leaders, dear God. I just pray that you would be with them as they make decisions. I pray that you would be with each of us as we're with our families, dear God. There's a whole new dynamic going on, and we're all under one roof, and we're not getting to move around as much. But I just pray that you would give us as parents patience, that if we're by ourselves, dear God, you would let us know that we're not alone. I just, thank you so much for each and every one on this call. I lift them up to you. I thank you for the protection that you've had over each and every one. I just pray that you would continue to be with us. You would keep us all safe until we come back and meet again next Wednesday. These things I ask in your name.